Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode 150. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. How would you like your life to be different if you had the confidence to chase your wildest dreams and take the action needed to create a life you love? At the same time, you had someone that would inspire, empower, and support you. Well, our guest today is no stranger to publicity, as seen in Essence, New York Times, Washington Post, and NPR. We want to welcome Rebecca Thompson, a clarity and confidence coach. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You have such an amazing bio, Rebecca. Why don't you share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your company?
So I'll actually start by sharing that I got my start in politics when I was just 14 years old. And I did an internship for a woman elected official, and it planted a love of politics. And so for the next 20 years, that's what I devoted my career and my life to. I even ran for office. I trained women around the world to run. And when I lost that election, I lost by just 6 votes on election day. I was devastated. And, for the first time I'd spent all these years checking all the boxes. And it was sort of the first time that I'd attempt to check a box and the universe had other plans for me. And I thought I was going to run again in a few years, but there was this thing that I wanted to do first, and that was to travel the world. And so after the 2016 election, I quit my job, sold everything I owned, and bought a one-way ticket to Malaysia. And for the next 6 months, I lived in and traveled to over 15 countries. And 1 week after I moved to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, so when I ran for office, my opponent was an 8-time convicted felon. He had been sued for sexual harassment. 1 week after I moved to Malaysia, my opponent was charged with 4 new felonies and was forced out of the Michigan legislature. And so this seat that I had dreamed of holding my entire life was now suddenly open, but I was 10,000 miles away from it. And that was really the first sort of shift that began to happen in my life, where I sat on that bathroom floor and I cried and I said, God, what are you trying to tell me? And what I heard is that this seat is not yours, right? And so I made a decision not to go back home to Detroit and to run for office again, and instead to continue traveling. And that cemented my commitment and my passion for getting more women of color and Black women into politics. But what I also started to realize is that, although my life and career looked good on paper, I was struggling, girl. And, I was struggling with imposter syndrome and confidence and worthiness. And those were not things that anybody had ever trained me on or talked to me about. And so it was after the 2018 election when I decided that I really wanted to merge those two worlds. And although I loved politics, as you can probably tell, what's happening in the country has changed our politics in a way that I've literally never experienced before. And there needed to be more intentionality around how to take care of ourselves in this work, but not just take care of ourselves, but how do we show up and actually be seen, right? And not show or share the version of ourselves that we think we need to. And so all of that work has inspired my personal development coaching work. I have a program called the Live in Your Light Bootcamp, and I am on a mission to help other high achieving Black women from around the world discover what lights them up, have such precise clarity that they know exactly what they're being called to do. And so that is the work that I get to do every single day. And it is the most amazing work I've ever done. And so I'm honored to be able to do this work.
Rebecca, I tell you that intro literally put chills through my body because when I hear your story and what you do, it is just absolutely amazing, because I think we all need a clarity and confidence coach. And when you talk about that full circle, I want you to share a little deeper. How did clarity come to you? How
Yeah.
did you personally discover that you needed to actually show others how to be confident and have clarity?
I will say that, to some people this might sound a little crazy, but I heard a conversation with God. I heard a voice. And, I think for a lot of my life, I've always had a really strong intuition. It was only in the last few years that I discovered that I was an empath. So I would feel things deeply. I would sort of, always have this sense of knowing that I really couldn't explain. And so one day I heard this voice that said, if you do everything that I'm about to tell you to do, I will give you everything you've ever wanted. And I was like, whose voice is this, God? Like, is this me? Is it, what's happening here? And what I heard was be still. And I had spent so many years of my life and career running, right? I traveled for a living. My nieces and nephews would see airplanes in the sky and they would say, look, it's Auntie Becky. Like I was always ripping and running. And that busyness, that, sort of lifestyle was always something that I aspired to have. And then when I had it, what I realized is that I was always outrunning my feelings, right? I was always outrunning what was really underneath everything. And so this was really the first opportunity that I'd had probably in a long time to just sit still. But what I heard was get off of social media, stop dating, stop drinking, stop having sex. I started devouring books. Like I've always been a bookworm, and I would read listen to a podcast, and then it would send me another clue. And it really sort of felt like this, scavenger hunt, if you will, from the universe of like leading me to the next thing. And so and oftentimes I think women feel like clarity should be a distinct and clear roadmap for the next 12 steps, right? That is not what clarity is. What it is the next thing to do, right? It's the next best step. And it's a nudge that says, pick up this book. It's a nudge that says, call this friend, right? Or send this email. And so as I started to sort of take those steps, the path began to unfold in front of me. And then what started to happen is that friends were like, what are you doing? Like your energy is different, So, and I should say in the span of less than a year, I went from being severely depressed and anxious, so much so that I literally was just getting up and going to work every day, relishing getting home at 7 p.m. to crawl in the bed. I was just really struggling with my personal life. I was in and out of what really I know now were emotionally abusive relationships. And fast forward, and I should also say having a job that I commuted over an hour to, I would work 12 to 18 hour days, and I was like killing myself. Fast forward to, less than a year later, I have generated over $100,000 in my business in just 6 months. I've attracted a soulmate partner. I work from my couch in my pajamas with my dog every day, and I get to work with these amazing women. So I say all that to say that like the path it's not all going to be revealed to you. The how is not going to always be revealed to you, right? I believe that God / the universe gives us a vision, and it is our job to acknowledge that we see that vision, right? And so for me, it was, what if there were these women in politics or women in business or women in their careers and lives who could show up as their full, most authentic selves and allow themselves to be seen, right? And that meant no shrinking. It meant no performing, all these things that we do to sort of, either shrink ourselves or puff ourselves up. Yeah, trusting that for myself. I think my clients and my community and friends and family have seen the evidence of it in my own life, but also the fruits of that work is now manifesting in the lives of all of these amazing Black women across the country. So it has been a journey for sure.
And Rebecca, what was that aha moment that you knew that your business was going to be successful?
I always knew that I was being called to play bigger. From the time I was a little kid, I have an identical twin sister. And my sister and I would hear from our parents that there was a calling on our life. And I thought everybody's parents said this to them. I thought that was something, I thought everybody felt like they were called to do something bigger in the world. And I've always known it. I couldn't tell you what that, how that would manifest or how it would show up in my life. But I will tell you, it really was always this silent tug, this silent nudge. And so at the end of 2018, I was wrapping up for the election cycle. And I decided that once I left that job, that I would not apply for any more jobs. And I have a dry erase wall in my living room. And I put on this board, and I'm looking at it even now. It says, "What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?" And my response to that was, I would not look for a job. Okay. And I was 14. So this idea that I would not look for a job was ridiculous. Okay. Because I'm thinking to myself, well, how you going to pay your rent? And, how you going to make money? How you going to provide for yourself? And so I knew that if I could not have both faith and fear at the same time. Okay. I could not say that I was feeling called to build this business and then, be looking for jobs every day. And so I turned off every alert for every job listserv. I even ran a job listserv that had over 8,000 people on it. And I silenced those notifications because I did not want anything to cloud this vision that I had. And so I literally just said, okay, I'm going to start. I didn't have a name for this boot camp yet. My website was still focused on candidate coaching and training, right? I didn't have all what I thought the pieces were, but I didn't let that stop me. And I think, I meet a lot of women who will say, well, I can't do this thing because I don't have that thing. And I didn't wait until it was built. I built it with the first set of women. And I just said, hey, I'm feeling called to create this work that focuses on a couple of key things. And I knew what those things were. And it was, this is for you if you want the clarity to discover what lights you up. If you want to break the destructive patterns and habits that are keeping you safe, stuck, and broke. And if you want to show up in your life as your most authentic self, right? So that was literally the only thing I knew that I wanted to do. And I put that out to the world. And I said, I'm looking for, 10 women who want to be on this journey with me for the next 4 weeks. And there were 10 women, or more who raised their hands. And that first cohort of my boot camp launched in January of this year. We are wrapping up our 5th cohort, and I've served over 50 Black women from across the country and actually around the world. And so it has just been amazing because I couldn't have even dreamed it up even any better if I tried. So you don't always have to know where the road is going to take you. You just got to start. And I know it sounds cliche, but it is absolutely true.
What problem exists in the world today that you'd like to solve?
There are so many women who look like they have their shit together. Excuse my French. We look good. We look good on paper. We look good on the outside. We have beautiful homes and families and cars and jobs and careers. And on the inside, there are so many women, particularly Black women, who are silently struggling. And the problem that I am working to solve is, I want to create spaces where Black women can really talk about the pain that they're in and also feel like they belong, right? Because I think a lot of us, we struggle and then we think we're the only ones struggling through it, right? So whether it is, wounds that you haven't healed from childhood, and therefore your personal relationships continue to erect the same patterns, or you have the same experiences in your professional life, whatever those things are, so much of that really originates with what we believe about ourselves. And so one of my sort of phrases or mantras that I'm always sharing with my clients is, I want you to see you the way that we see you. And I think when more Black women see themselves in the way that the world sees them, we see them as badass and powerful and smart and brilliant. And many Black women don't see that. They don't believe that for themselves. And so I think if we change that, we change everything.
And Rebecca, you're talking specifically about Black women, African-American women, women from the Black diasporas. Why do you think, or do you think it's more prevalent amongst Black women than other nationalities?
We literally have trauma in our DNA. And because our ancestors have been bought and paid for, our experiences are vastly different from so many other communities. So in my political training, one of the most powerful trainings that I do is a money mindset training for Black women candidates to learn how to raise money. And so raising money is one of the most important barriers to running for elected office. And so there are all of these, I was encountering all of these Black women who were scared to talk about money, and started to do more research. I realized, like, what if we connect the dots between, our specific ancestry of slavery to where we are now, right? And so I began to even paint this picture for not just, how many years removed, but like what that meant for how we were passing down generational pain and trauma, literally generation after generation. And so there's a specific example of one of the largest slave trades in America happened in Georgia. And a few months ago, I was in Atlanta doing this training. And I learned about the largest sort of slave auction ever, right? And on this particular one day, and there were about maybe 500 slaves that were sold. The lowest amount that a slave was purchased for was $250. And the highest was maybe $30,000 for like a family of 5. And so when you think about the fact that there were literal price tags on our life, right? And what that pain, the pain of the separation of our families, the pain of, what money and capitalism did to our families, all of that stuff is embedded into our DNA. We then think, right, 3, 5, 6 generations later, that there's something wrong with us when we can't talk about money in our family, or that we struggled in poverty. And what I wanted to unpack, and it's the reason why I'm speaking to specifically Black women, is because our generational pain was different, it means the solutions have to be different. So it's not enough to just go tell these women, go be great, go raise money, go do all these things, when we haven't even acknowledged, let alone addressed the wounds that they have. And so it doesn't mean that they heal that trauma, instantly, but they begin to think about the way they talk about money and feel about it. And, if they open their bills or not, right? Like, those are all things that if we help Black women understand now, then they can then in turn, like, change and begin to heal that relationship that their own children have with it, right? So I think, again, people try to just say, pull yourselves up from your bootstraps, or like, you just got to work harder. And that is not the solution for us, right? Because the problem is also very different.
What's some advice that you wish you had followed?
I wish that I would have learned to trust my intuition sooner. It feels like a superpower. But when I was 14 years old, I couldn't trust it because I thought I was crazy. And I would, like I said, in the last few years, I recently discovered that I'm an empath. And so I would feel things very deeply, and I could feel people's energy. And, somebody wouldn't have to say a word, but my energy would almost, like, their energy would repel themselves to me. And so, but I would still have those people in my life because I thought, well, they didn't do anything wrong, but their energy was not a match for mine. And that meant that I spent decades in jobs that didn't serve me, relationships that didn't serve me, friendships, you name it. And so one of the things that I am very proud of now is that, so my intention for this year has been to trust my own intuition, even if it's beyond my understanding. And what that says is I don't need proof, and I think sometimes because we think we need proof, we spend way too long in situations that we knew from the beginning didn't serve us. And the way in which this is, manifested most powerfully for me is I was in a job, and within 2 weeks, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there. And it was my dream job. This was the job that brought me back to the United States. It was the largest resource for women in politics in the country. But within 2 weeks, my spirit said, this is not it. And I spent another 6 months at that job really deeply unhappy because I didn't listen to myself. And I decided then that I would never make that decision again. And so it has never steered me wrong. And when I listened to it, really beautiful, amazing things happen. So I really wish that I would have listened to that advice so much sooner.
Now tell us, is there a social cause that is connected with your company?
I don't know that I would define it as a social cause, but what I would say is that this work is so much bigger than a company, right? I believe that my mission and my purpose is tied to this work. I think that generating revenue is just the fruits of that, right? There are many, many things that have sort of come to fruition because this business has been put into the world. But I also know it's not about me. I am just the vehicle for this work. And that, I don't know if that sounds crazy, but I really do see it as I am just the vehicle. And this isn't about business. It's about life. It's about, helping Black women feed and nurture their soul. Because I will tell you something, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter the title you have. If you are not lit up, people can tell. They can tell the difference. And the people that you see that are soaring past you and that are, launching these amazing things or are building these movements, it's because they're doing something that is tied to their purpose. While it may not be a formal sort of social cause, if you will, I want to create the space for more Black women and women of color, but particularly Black women, to just show up in the world unapologetically. That is already starting to happen. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of that work.
Rebecca, someone's listening to the interview and they're saying, wow, I want to be lit up. I want what Rebecca is talking about. Drop a value bomb to the audience of one thing that they could do right now to get lit.
As I mentioned, clarity doesn't always come as step-by-step MapQuest instructions or directions. And so what I would challenge them to think about is one thing that they can do is they can listen to themselves. And so again, it might be somebody might cross their mind, and instead of just dismissing it, reach out to them. Or, you feel compelled to pick up a particular book at a bookstore, right? Follow the breadcrumbs. If you follow the breadcrumbs, you don't have to know where they're going to take you, but it really is true that the roadmap, the path will unfold before you. And so what we're rewarded for is the bravery to do something different, right? We're rewarded for the bravery to say, I don't like my life, but I'm willing to do something about it, even if that makes me uncomfortable. It takes courage to live in your light. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But it meant I had to let go of relationships that didn't serve me. I had to leave cities that didn't serve me. I had to leave countries that didn't serve me, right? And so what it means is, I used to have this idea that I needed to go to school, get a good job, and be stable. And then I realized I had checked all those boxes and was living a very stable life, was making six figures, and I was still miserable. And to be honest, I was actually more miserable than I was when I made less money. And so I knew then that I had to be willing to get off the beaten path, go figure out for myself, right, where I was being called. And it meant listening, even if it didn't make sense at the time. It meant listening, even if other people told me that I was crazy. My family literally thought that I was losing my mind when I moved to Malaysia. And I know now and knew then it was the best decision I could have ever made. But they, of course, they were concerned, rightfully so, because they love me. But it turned out to be, one of the most beautiful experiences. And had I not trusted, and literally I saw a Facebook ad that said, do you want to travel the world and work remotely? That was the breadcrumb that I followed that led me to traveling the world. And had I not seen and been receptive to that Facebook ad and clicked on it and then applied, right? Like the breadcrumbs led me there. And so you got to listen. Your soul, your spirit, your intuition, God, the universe, whatever you call it, the answer is already inside of you, right? And then you just got to be bold and brave enough to trust that you already have what you need.
What does self-care look like to you, Rebecca?
I actually think that when I think about self-care, I actually think of it as soul care. That, we get a body and we get a soul, or we get a spirit, however you want to define it for yourself. And while I do things like, get manicures or massages, what I also do is nurture my soul. And I have hobbies. I crochet, I sew, Right now, as we approach the holiday season, I'm making my family and friends crochet blankets. That feeds my soul. I love, love, love taking my dog for walks. That lights up my soul. So all of the things that actually feel like soul care for me, it's found in my morning routine. It's found in the minutes that I set aside for myself when I read before I go to sleep. Like, that is what self-care means for me, because I give myself the best parts of me before I give them away to the world. And so I'm doing that consistently. And some days I fall off and I'm not always as good about it. But when I do that consistently, I can absolutely feel the difference.
Now, what do you do to stay fit mentally and physically?
So I read about somewhere between 100 to 200 books a year, devour books. And I used to be like ashamed or shy to acknowledge that I was a bookworm, but now it's one of the best parts of me. And I have so much room for improvement when it comes to taking care of my physical body. So every couple months, my partner and I will like empty out the cabinets and, do a green smoothie cleanse and like reset our palate. I will say that because I work from home and I'm either working from home and like completely sedentary, or I'm on the road traveling. So it is often really challenging because I'll find myself in really great routines when I'm home, and then they'll be disrupted when I'm on the road. But I will say that one of the ways that I take better care of myself is to actually cook dinner and to like cook real food and real meals. And so that helps. So yeah, I try to do that consistently. But I think, what I really would hope for the folks who are listening is I don't have this all figured out. There are days when I don't always follow my advice. And so I'm not, by no means does any of this mean that I'm perfect or that I don't fall off or that I don't struggle. I think the difference is I just keep going and I get back up again. And it has absolutely helped.
Tell us what you're most grateful for now in your life.
I am so grateful for everything. I have a really beautiful gratitude practice every day. And I used to think, I'm grateful for my career or my family or those things, but there's so much to be grateful for. I am particularly grateful for the ability to be my own boss and to be the CEO of my own life. I read a book several years ago called The 4-Hour Workweek. And it was only then that I realized that I had been conditioned to create a life and career where I traded time for money. And so I'd go to work and get a paycheck in exchange. But then I realized that, wait a minute, what if I could actually choose my own adventure every day? What if I could determine what time I could wake up or determine who I got to work with? And I didn't even really believe that that was possible. But now not only is that possible, but I don't have clients that I hate. I don't have projects anymore that I hate. I get to curate a life that includes a soulmate partner, a dog who adores me, even when I don't give him enough attention, or, really significant friendships and relationships. So it is no exaggeration to say, that I'm living the life of my dreams, and I'm not a millionaire, right? I don't have a fancy car. Like, none of those things mean happiness and joy for me anymore. But what I will tell you is I am loved and I'm supported. I'm supported in my life and in my business. That's all about perspective, So I'm really, really grateful for that.
And Rebecca, you talked about loving to read and being a bookworm. What book would you recommend and why?
I have so many. I would say for anybody who wants to think differently about the way they earn money, the 4-Hour Workweek is a good place to start, particularly if you are at all interested in a career or profession that allows you to be location independent. And again, I have always just been conditioned to believe that I had to physically go to a job or sit at a desk. And then I could not figure out why my spirit was like freaking out, because I hate being tethered to desks. I hate being in offices. And yet here I was thinking that that is how my career had to look. That book was the first one that really helped me reimagine what my day could look like. And now both me and my partner have location independent jobs. And so he's going to start a new job in a few weeks. And the fact that we will now be able to travel together, like that is the life that we envisioned for ourselves. And now it is coming to pass. And so that means that, when I have a client trip that takes me to California, he can come too. And we can turn all of our work trips into vacations. That's something that I always dreamed of being able to do, but I didn't know how to do it. And so the 4-hour work week really helped me imagine what that could look like for my business.
Let's shift gears for a minute. What is the worst moment in business, and what was your takeaway?
When I moved to Malaysia, I mentioned that I, over the course of 6 months, lived in and traveled to about 15 countries. But when I got halfway through that experience, my intention was to be gone for an entire year. But when I got halfway through the experience, I'd run out of money. I racked up credit card debt. I had no real idea what I was doing in the first iteration of my business. And at the time, I was just exclusively doing candidate coaching and training. And again, because I thought that was all that I knew how to do. And I had to come home. Like I needed a job. And so that dream job that brought me back to the States was also about me needing to make money. And so initially I felt like a failure because here I had sold all my stuff and given up my house and my car only to come home 6 months later with literally nothing. Okay. I had only one backpack and one suitcase. Everything I owned fit into that one backpack and suitcase. And at the time, I actually even, really struggled because I was like, this is not what the plan was supposed to be. This was not what it was supposed to look like. But I know now that that was all a part of the plan. So at the time I saw this failure, I saw being sort of broke and confused and homeless, like all of that it felt like failure at the time. But what it really was a reminder that I wasn't coming back to that place, right? This was the last time that I was going to not have clarity in my business, or this would be the last time that I wasn't making money that was passive. In the 2 years since then, not only has my business changed and my business model and who I work with and for changed, but also, I've just let go of so much of that. So it is no longer viewed as failure. It was preparation for this chapter that I'm in right now.
If you conducted this interview, Rebecca, what is the one question that you would ask yourself? And I want you to ask the question and answer it.
I think that what I would have wanted to know is how to really overcome the imposter syndrome. And I had no idea that was what I was struggling with. And I always would have viewed myself as confident and self-assured. Other people would have described me that way. So it was very much a secret pain. And the only way to really overcome it is to acknowledge that you have it in the first place. And sometimes you can acknowledge that by, seeing how when people, maybe they call you an expert and you shun the word, oh, don't call me an expert, or they give you compliments and then you say, oh, but we find ways to really diminish our own selves. Or there's opportunities that you won't allow yourself to pursue because you don't feel ready enough or smart enough. So the question that I would want to know is, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? And there are a couple of really powerful ways to do that. One is to know that there is no such thing as ready. There is literally no such thing as being ready. You can do all the preparation you think you need and yet still be unprepared. And so that means you got to start before you're ready. It means that you give yourself the same grace that you give everybody else, because you just allow yourself to start and improve later, as opposed to feeling like you have to be perfect or that you can't fail or that somehow failure is a bad thing. But really overcoming imposter syndrome can turn, it can turn your life around in even just a matter of weeks, because we have opportunities that present themselves all the time and we talk ourselves out of. It's not even other people that talk us out of these things. We often talk ourselves out of them. And so if I would have had that ability anytime sooner in my life, I would have had a different life. And so I'm grateful for all of the sort of twists and turns that sort of brought me here. But yeah, you got to start by overcoming the imposter syndrome.
We've come to the part of our interview, Rebecca, where I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and it's called the Fun Facts Lightning Round, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Sure, let's go.
The last movie you saw?
I watch a lot of movies with my partner, and I'm going to say that the last movie that we watched must have been all of the scary movies that we watched around Halloween. So we watched all of those.
You relax doing what?
Taking a bath.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
India Ari.
Your favorite dance song?
Anything by Beyonce.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Probably salmon.
Your favorite month?
March, because it is the month of my birthday.
Absolutely. So before we conclude, Rebecca, why don't you share with our audience the best way that they can connect with you if they're saying, I want to do business with Rebecca? Tell us the best way that they can connect with you and all your social media handles.
Yeah, they can find me online at RebeccaMThompson.com. There is also a free 31-day mindset makeover, which is an email course that sends every day a new affirmation or an exercise or prompt that will really help you get clear about the life that you want to create for yourself, but also how to get there. And I'm also on Instagram at Go Live in Your Light.
Rebecca, thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast. That is a wrap.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.